I'm going to start getting myself one of those kind of hype videos. As is our tradition, because we believe we have some of the best students in not just the country, but the world, I want to introduce to you our interviewer for today, who is one of our excellent students here at SMU. Megan Ashford is a Dallas-Fort Worth native, junior SMU fashion, media, and journalism major with a minor in advertising. She'll be graduating in May 2025. Megan is the magazine editor for SMU Look, which is our student-run fashion magazine. She is a peer academic leader and is on the advising committee for the fashion media department. Megan has partnered with the Meadow School on previous events, and this will be her third time moderating one of our major events. Would you please welcome Megan Ashford to the stage? When my team wanted to write the bio that I would read for our speaker, I just was like, please don't write anything. I want to tell you how I met him, and I met him through a very unlikely source. After our President's Executive Council meeting, Brad Cheeves, who is our Vice President of Development and External Affairs, said, I need to see you in my office. Well, when you hear that, that scares you to death. Because one, I knew I didn't have a check big enough to write. And two, I didn't know whether I'd caused some kind of stir in the press. But he said to me, he handed me this book and he said, I want you to meet this guy. This guy is amazing. This guy needs to connect with you and you need to connect with him. And I looked at the book and I looked at Brad and I said, well, okay. And I was like, yeah, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I started reading the book. I became transfixed by the book. The story resonated to me to the point where I truly believed that I knew this man. And I picked up the phone and I called him. And it was like talking to the book. To say that I have instantly connected with him is an understatement. His family has become my family. My family has become his family. His whole team is like my whole team. He has done the work of bridge building in a way that I can only hope to do. He has walked the walk. He has talked the talk. There is no one he will not talk to. No one. Whether it's the halls of Congress or Austin, whether it's Martha's Vineyard or Palm Springs, whether it's Oak Cliff or East Dallas, you can find him making a difference. I want to invite to the stage my friend, my brother, my ride or die, Mr. Antong Lucky.
Yeah. You know I gotta hug you. I love you too. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you. How you doing? Nice, nice.
Are you comfortable?
Yes, yes.
In here. Okay. So first off, I just want to say thank you so much for being here with us tonight. At all? Is that better?
Testing, testing.
It's not picking up.
Test.
Okay, I'm just going to hold it like this. I'm sorry.
Testing.
If it looks a little tacky, I'm sorry. But first off, I just want to say thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Well, evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's so much better. Okay,
Yes.
Here we go again. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. So first off, I want to start by asking, in an interview for your book, you said that there was Antong, a sweet, smart student, and then there was Lucky, a guy playing a role. Can you tell us a little bit about those two different men?
Sure. Can y'all hear me well? Y'all can hear me pretty good? First of all, I want to answer that question, but I got to say, man, thank you to everyone who came here. You know, I travel all over the country speaking, but I will tell you, sitting on this stage is nothing like getting that type of invitation and introduction from Dr. Dixon at SMU campus. That's the best. That's one of the best. That's one of the best. And I love SMU. But yes, we'll dive right into that question. Antong Lucky, well, Lucky versus Antong. In the book, I talk about that when I talk about this duplicity that most young people in urban communities across this country endure every day, right? Growing up, my father was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He ultimately did 37 years out of my life. And so my mom went to work, and I applied all of my talents in school. I was a straight A student. I was a talented and gifted student. I remember conversations with my mother and a teacher about moving me up a couple of grades. And so, because my mother worked, my grandparents were my primary caretakers. My grandparents was the one who gave me that love that I was lacking, that I needed. They encouraged me on. Because when I was younger, believe it or not, I was real skinny and I had a big head. And so my cousins used to call me Blimpy, like the Goodyear blimp. And that hurt my feelings. That hurt me. But my grandparents were saying, baby, you got a big head because you got a big brain and you very smart. And some kind of way that made me feel better, you know, when my cousin would tease me. So I applied all of my talents in the school. I was a talent A honor roll student, right? But no amount of love that my grandparents gave me growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in could suffice for what I dealt with when I walked out my door, for what I dealt with when I walked out the classroom. Because I grew up in a community, in a neighborhood that said survival was the rule, that you had to be tough. You had to be smart. Kids get bullied, so you had to be tough. So here I was walking this line when in school, I'm the kid that brought the teacher the apple. I was the favorite student, according to the teacher, unless you just tell every student that. But I was the favorite. Yeah,
They do. They do.
But I was that kid. But when I came out, I had to, going home because they were busing us to schools. Going home, my safety depended on two things, because the bus oftentimes left if you didn't make it on time. And it depended on how fast I can run in some cases or how hard I can fight. And so I can remember as a kid dealing with that duplicity, of trying to be a good kid and navigating the terrain of a neighborhood that said you have to be this way, right? And I remember feeling like that was unfair, like somebody, and I didn't have no one to talk to about that who could understand this phenomenon that I think is associated with neighborhoods, urban neighborhoods, underserved neighborhoods around this country. And so that was a balance for me, trying to be a good kid and have good grades, but be what the neighborhood said I had to be. I had to be tough. I had to be rough. And I had cousins who weren't like me. I mean, they had succumbed and yielded to that. And so I remember amputating my personality to become what the community, the neighborhood said I had to be.
There's a pivotal moment in your book where you were describing your sentencing, and you brought up how the judge called you a menace to society. Now, that is a heavy label for any person, but especially a young black man.
Right.
Can you share with us the impact of being labeled as that?
Yes, I remember standing in front of the judge. I had 6 or 7 character witnesses to testify that I was a great kid, that I didn't deserve to go to prison. It was May 21st, May 7th, my daughter was born, right? I was first-time father. And I remember, because of how I grew up, I always said to myself that I didn't want to be to my daughter or to my child what my father was to me, and that was absent. I didn't want to be that. And so when I was standing in front of the judge, expecting, first time in trouble, expecting to go home, without blinking, the judge said, "You're a menace to society." And I remember the weight of that, because as I stood there, it seemed like everything just was in slow motion. And I had this conversation in my head where I was saying, "But Judge, you don't understand. I'm from East Dallas. It's tough. It's rough. You got to be there. But that's not really who I am." You know, that's not me. I had to play this role to survive, right? And I remember how I felt having that conversation in my head because it never came out my mouth. It was just like a conversation I was having with myself, standing there in suspense while this judge sentenced me. And then I never forgot how when I glanced back at my mother, the disappointment that she had in her eyes as I was being sentenced, right? And he sentenced me to prison. And as I was looking at my mother, it just done something to me. That was heavy because the only reference to Menace to Society that I had was the movie. You know, I just remember the movie, man, and I was no way, no shape, Old Dog. You know, if y'all remember the movie, Old Dog, I wasn't Old Dog. I probably was Kane, who was trying to do good, was hanging with somebody who was doing bad, but I wasn't Old Dog. But that sentence sparked something in me. You know, walking back to that cell at that moment, and I didn't know at the time, but I became very, very introspective, you know, and started looking at my life saying, how did I go from a talented and gifted student to a judge calling me a menace to society? I remember going back to the cell, pondering that question, and that question alone became the catalyst for me once I made it to prison to look in that stainless steel mirror and begin to look at the person who was staring back at me and begin to be accountable for all of the decisions that I made that ultimately led up to that point. I began to look at that, and I'm gonna tell you, it wasn't a pretty sight because I could pinpoint where I was lukewarm. I can pinpoint where I did stuff that I didn't want to do, but I did it for the appeasement of the crowd, all that kind of stuff that led me to that. And at that moment, I began to hold myself accountable. I said, I have to hold. So I didn't blame nobody. I didn't blame the fact that my father was in prison. I didn't blame my mother for working so much. I didn't blame the wife. I didn't do none of that. I said, I'm gonna be accountable at this moment for me. Now imagine this. Coming into prison, and I neglected to mention that in the process, I started the first blood gang in Dallas, an A honor roll student who started the first blood gang in Dallas. So at 20 years old, I'm going into prison, and in prison, people are looking to me as if I am a leader, I'm to be worshipped, that whole 9 yards, because this was the advent of the gang stuff that migrated here from California. And I'm gonna be quiet. I'm contemplating and pondering, how did I end up in this place? But I met this guy coming out of the child hall 3 months into my sentence, who walked up to me as I'm coming out, older inmate, and he said, "Hey, I need to talk to you, little brother." And walking down the bowling alley, this the place in prison, he said to me, he said, "Little brother," he said, "Man, I've been hearing about you all over this prison. These men are paying homage to you. They're falling out of place, seeking. They'll do whatever you ask them to do." I was 20 years old. And I'm sitting here wondering, like, where you getting all this from? And he said to me these exact words. He said, "Brother, if you have the ability to lead these men to do wrong, within you is the same ability to lead them to do right." He said, "You're a leader and I need you." And at that moment, my life, the trajectory of my life changed at that very moment, because that guy began to mentor me. He began to give me books to read. I started reading. He would make me read these books 5 times before I even had a conversation with him, and for retention. And I became just obsessed with that passion that I had as a kid for learning. And in prison, I read over 1,500 books while in prison, and transformed my life, my whole life in prison.
Which ones were they exactly, if you don't mind sharing?
I read a lot of books. Nathan McCall was one of the ones back then. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, Destruction of the Black Civilization. I read a whole bunch of books. I mean, I read a plethora of books. I became friends with the librarian. I'll never forget her. She was a little old white lady who was a volunteer, And me and her, we were so much friends that whenever the prison got new books, she would call me out first and let me get the first dibs on the book. That's how I had it made. And I would read the books before she put them out to the rest of the unit.
No. Growing up, I was a huge book nerd. You can even ask my mom
Yes,
over there.
indeed.
I was just reading left and right. She'd have to force me out of my room to eat dinner. I'd be like, no, I have to finish this chapter. It was bad. But you answered actually the previous one, because I was going to ask key insights from that, but you answered it perfectly, so thank you for that.
Okay.
But I find it interesting that while you were in prison, you began the art of building bridges,
Yes.
including one with the head of the Aryan Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Now, there's two questions with this. What was that? Was that kind of a risky move for a black gang member from your neighborhood? And how in the world did you end up talking to him? And what did you guys end up talking about specifically?
I know. That seems totally odd. It was totally odd then. But for me, as I began this journey, right? Because I'm a book nerd too. My team will tell you, like, I'm a real book nerd. But I began this journey, as I began this journey of self-discovery, I was realizing a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And as I was getting this information, I was shedding a lot of the indoctrination of the neighborhood or lack thereof information. And as I was learning, right, what I realized what was happening as I was going on this journey, that I was gaining so much confidence, right? You know, when you got knowledge, when you're armed with real knowledge and it's applicable and you're applying it, oh man, yeah, it's interesting. And so I was learning a lot of stuff. I started to see how we are divided, you know, as a nation, you know, because in prison, I'm going to tell you, if y'all ever go to prison, hopefully y'all don't ever go to prison. Please don't go to prison. I'm not advocating that. But it is a very segregated place, very segregated from the onset. Blacks over here, white, you know, it's divided by race, right? And you got to imagine, as I'm getting this information, I'm saying this is ridiculous. Like, why we all human beings? You know, why are we like this, right? And so as I'm shedding that, I'm applying the knowledge that I'm getting. I'm not just getting it, I'm applying it, right? And so fortunate for me, I had money on my books, right? So in prison, and again, don't go to prison. I'm not advocating prison. I'm not glamorizing it all. It was just a step in my journey. I learned from it, and I don't advocate it. But I had money on my books. And so we were spread. Spread is like when you buy food from commissary and then you make this big bucket and everybody eat. In prison, it was customary that once you make a spread, you only eat with the people that you connected to, and you throw the rest away. That bothered me because I knew people who weren't fortunate enough that didn't have money on their books, and it just didn't make sense to me. So what I would do, because I paid for it, that was against prison rules, I would take food around to people in the dorm and just, if I thought they was hungry, because you want to eat the spread. You don't want to eat what's in the cafeteria in the chow hall. You want the spread. So I would go around and give people plates, you know. And so this one guy in particular who you just referenced, he was the head of the Aryan Nation. This dude had more tattoos than you could name, all over his face, big cross swastika on his forehead. But I wasn't judging him on that. I was just, hey, you hungry? And so what ended up happening is we started having conversations based on me giving him food and starting a conversation. And so we would be in the back of the day room just talking, right? Because I got new knowledge now. You know, so I'm not bound by the old knowledge, right? That tell us we have to be separated and I gotta hate you because of your affiliation, because I denounced my gang in prison. And so I got new knowledge now that we're human beings, right? And plus I'm a philosophy major. And so I'm gonna tell you about that in a minute. And so look, so we're in the back of the day room having conversation, and mind you, seriously, it's forbidden to mix races in prison, right? And because I remember the guys will be looking with this look on their face like, what is Antong doing talking to this guy, right? I remember that. Remember the looks. But what I found from those conversations, which was some of the rich conversations that I've had, was that he was like me, that we had a lot in common, right? That I became a gang member because I was protecting the little boy inside of me who was afraid when he encountered the stimuli in his environment. You know, because we ain't born crazy, bad, and all that good stuff. We put on these levels. We taught that, right? And so as I began to shed that, when I was talking to him, I realized the same in him, that we had the same aspirations for family. And then I started seeing him, I started seeing the little boy in him. I started seeing the tattoos and the affiliation with the gang as a way to protect the little boy in him. The same way I put the gang stuff on and to protect the little boy in me. But just like I told that judge, that wasn't me. And I felt that from him. And so we began to connect. We began to talk about life, so much so that that relationship later on prevented a race ride, because me and this guy had a relationship and he was over the air, and I was able to go to him to prevent a retaliation killing after someone had been killed in a race ride, right? But it was that relationship, and that relationship with him became the foundation later on for the work that I do today.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that philosophy
Yes.
stuff? Because I took a class here.
Yes.
I didn't care for it.
I love
It was
philosophy.
more so like minds and machines, and I
Yeah.
don't do like that type of stuff. So
It was good for me, and particularly Plato. Plato had this book in the Republic called The Cave, right? And some of y'all may be familiar with it. And I remember reading that. And got to mind you, I'm reading this with some hardened gang members and some hardened people in prison. We on the rec yard at a table. Just imagine me and some former gang members or current gang members talking philosophy, right? That's a sight in itself. So, but in the cave, Plato talked about 5 people being bound by the neck, can't move right or left, looking at a wall. Behind them was a fire. And he talked about how these individuals in this cave got proficient in naming the shadows that was cast on the wall. Do y'all remember that? And so what Plato was saying was that these people got so proficient in naming the shadows, right? And then he went on to say, I'm paraphrasing. He said, imagine, if you will, one of the captives breaking loose, coming out the cage, coming out the cave, and as he come out the cave, the light, he had to adjust his eyes to the light, and then he see the sun as being the main source, right, of all energy. He starts seeing these forms. He's talking about forms, right, and theories. He starts seeing these shadows, these forms of what these shadows really were, right? And being enlightened by that information, he also said, what if that captive went back to the cave to individuals who never left and began to say, listen, y'all, I'm paraphrasing, I'm giving y'all the other version. And he said, listen, y'all, that what we name, that's not what that is. This is the real theory. This is the real form. This is the real identity of that. And he was describing how hard that would be, or easy that be, to convince these other individuals. But when I read that story, right, I likened it to my life, because I said, for me, growing up in the neighborhood, I had adopted these labels, I adopted these ideologies, these ideals, and I began to act off of them. And so many of my peers, it did the same thing. We talking about gang bang, you're talking about all these subcultures that's prevalent in our neighborhoods. It's an identity, an adoption of the shadows, not mainstream America, but sub-America, right? Sub-ideals. And so I likened that with myself when I got the awakening, the knowledge, when I began to start educating myself. My mission and passion became, how do I go back into the cave of neighborhoods across this country, to tell young boys and young girls that choose SMU, choose college versus gang, choose education, choose principles and morals, choose love. And so my whole mission has been about, how do I go back into the caves around this country to pull individuals out and say, listen, this is not the right way. It's another way. Let me introduce you to it. Let me walk you through these landmines that we call life. Let me introduce you to some more knowledge that's superior, because I believe life is a competition of ideas, better ideas. We are always seeking for better ideas to improve quality of life and the pursuit of happiness. So that's been my mission. So it was through philosophy that I got that. And I go on with that, but I'm gonna pause right there.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
It transitions.
Yeah. Thank you.
You should be a professor here. I know there'd be a whole lot of kids wanting to hear that.
Yes.
So, but when you came out of prison, you wanted to change your neighborhood, make a difference, but your mentor, Bishop Omar required you to rebuild an important bridge. Can you share with us an assignment that he required from you?
Oh yeah, this is good, y'all. So I do a whole change in prison. I began teaching, leading, pulling other men back, encouraging them to be accountable, encouraging them to get away from the idiosyncrasies that keeps us trapped out. That's what I was doing. And so when I was released from prison, Willie Ray Fleming was my mentor in prison who poured into me. But he set me up, when I look back in hindsight, to meet Bishop Omar. But when I met Bishop Omar when I got out of prison, I came to him real naive and gully, saying, man, I want to help my neighborhood. I want to save these boys. I want to save these kids. I don't want them to have to take this path that I took. And mind you, I was a gang member before I went to prison. So his first question to me, his first statement to me was, we have to go to your enemies who you was rivaling with and ask them for permission. And I remember looking at him, because you got in mind, he looked like a college student. I just met him, right? And he said, you have to go to your enemies. And I said, sir, I didn't think that far. I just want to save my neighborhood. That's suicide, going to that neighborhood. But that brother convinced me. He convinced me to build a bridge with some individuals who last saw me in a bad light. But it was something about that, right, that I didn't understand at 24, but it was something about me going into enemy territory, unarmed, with just this passion to help. And I'm going to tell this story real quick. We were in enemy territory. I got to tell y'all this. We was in enemy territory. We was knocking on the door in some rundown apartment. It looked dangerous. When I look back, I don't know how he convinced me to do that. And we knocked on the door, and you heard a bunch of scuffling. This is real. A bunch of scuffling. And they looked out the window, and they said, that's Antong, saying me. And then you heard a bunch of guns cocking. And Omar, in his infinite wisdom, and he's only 3 years older than me, and he looked like a college student, so he didn't have no swag, no nothing, right? He didn't look like he was from the hood. So I'm trusting him. And he said, put your hands up. So it's 100-degree weather. I got my hands above my head. These dudes snatched open the door, and it's like 8 guys, and they got guns pointed at us. And they say, what are you doing here? Talking to me. And when I tell you I had cotton mouth, my tongue was like it was stuck to my mouth. I couldn't even speak. And before I can say something, Omar started talking, right? And I was like, oh my goodness. And I'm praying while he talking. I'm saying, God, I know you didn't bring me this far to leave me. I know this can't be how the story ends. I'm talking about literally my heart beating. I'm talking about million beats a minute. And Omar started talking, right? And as he talking, they lowering their guns, right? And in my head, I'm saying, please keep talking. Don't stop. Keep talking. Keep talking. Because I don't think he knew how serious it was. But at the end of the process, these guys dropped their guns. They accepted my invitation and my apology. That event, that bridge building event with my rival, a person who I grew up believing was my enemy, was the catalyst that allowed us to do the first ever gang peace treaty in the city of Dallas, where we had 400 young gang members to sign this declaration of peace. And that became the beginning of the work that we do today. That was in August of 2000. So that was my first bridge building experience, because I had to work with somebody who viewed me for a long time as the enemy. It took a while before my rival to accept what I was doing. But because I had done the work in prison, like I really worked on myself, I denounced the gang, I told you that knowledge, I educated myself, I understood then that it was my role to model what it looks like, even when it didn't feel right, model for the larger community what it looks like to be a real bridge builder.
I try to build bridges. I don't know if I can do all that yet. I'm sorry. I'm working on myself slowly.
Yes, indeed.
Slowly.
It happened. It's gonna happen.
Some people,
That's okay.
wait.
That's okay.
You have said that everybody has the right to change.
Yes.
What does it mean to engage in a redemption path forward?
Well, it's this idea that all of us, regardless of who we are entitled to be redeemed, right? Oftentimes, we come from, if you look at society now, and it's probably what you reference, we come from this condemnation standpoint where we are quick to condemn people because they don't agree with us. And so we need a new framework, right? And that framework is understanding that we all have the inalienable right to be redeemed, to modify, to adjust, to correct. I've done some stuff that I don't care to admit. Yeah. And if a person hold me to a lesser understanding or a lesser mistake that I've made, then there's no opportunity for growth. I think as people, we have to be strong enough to understand that making compromises and making adjustments that don't change your principles is what we all shooting for. I have to be able to sit with you, and regardless to what you say, regardless of what your idea is, even if I don't agree with it, to be able to still accept and respect you as a human being for that idea. Because one thing I learned that people develop in stages. I'm quite sure when I was younger, I was doing some stuff, and my mom, my grandmama, somebody wanted me to get that lesson right then, but I end up getting the lesson later. I spent my whole life building bridges. I have a lot of friends. Oftentimes, I'm in backyards around fire, and I'm the only African American there. And sometimes it's conversations that we've had that when I tell other people, they be offended immediately. But it don't offend me for you to have your opinion, because my role and my job is to, and I tell my friends, I say, listen, if you can't be honest and open about how you truly feel and how you truly think, then you're doing a disservice to our relationship, whether I agree with you or not. Because it's in when I acknowledge that, it's in when you acknowledge that true education happens. See, if we harbor and stay in our own echo chambers, that idea don't get challenged. I said it's a competition of ideas. And so if it's just in my own echo chamber, it never gets challenged. But if I'm comfortable, if we create spaces to have dialogue, and it's okay if we don't agree, it's okay, we may not agree, and that's okay. But the key is, how do we respect individuals and how we keep the dialogue open, because ultimately it changes. You can't heal what you don't reveal. And so we got to be able to reveal stuff, have challenging conversations, awkward conversations, but it gets us further along, because sometimes, just like me, in my situation, I was in an echo chamber of a neighborhood that said survival is the only way, that you had to be this way, right? That was unfair to me, but that was the dominant idea. And that's the idea that I went with until I was exposed to some different ideas. I was exposed to some ideas that said, I don't care what ethnicity is, we are human beings. So we have to love each other. But when we put these labels on, when we have these echo chambers, and when we do that, it causes us to be polarizing. It causes us to have these feelings, and those feelings only come because it's no information. See, information liberates you. So that's what I learned in prison. When I started reading and started studying various cultures, various ideas, it helped me. It helped me be able to see people. It helped me to be able to have friends who don't look like me. And that's okay, because we come from different orientations. Right now, I am working with Chief Garcia, who is the head top police officer in this city, right? To some people, they may say, why are you working with him? Oftentimes in my own community, I take a lot of hits for that. But I understand the greater view. I understand that most people who don't understand that relationship is operating off old information. They have old information and they haven't been challenged. Those ideas haven't been challenged. If his mission is to reduce violence in this city, and then my mission is to make sure mothers are not prematurely burying their kids, then why we can't align? And that's not to say that we're gonna agree on everything. See, often we think that we have to agree on everything. Like if I agree with you, that means I agree with everything. No. Or if I disagree, that means I hate you. That's the danger of society now. We have to be able to understand that we are complex individuals, that we're not going to agree the same on everything, but we can find those places where we do agree. Like Frederick Douglass said, since it's Black History, he said, I'll unite with anybody to do right and no one to do wrong. That's how we have to operate.
Now, for our very last question, speaking of building bridges, you obviously aren't afraid of them, especially with people that would be an unlikely alliance.
Right.
So I have two questions for this. How do you manage the backblow when people find out about these individuals are some of your conversation partners?
Repeat the last part.
You're welcome. How do you manage the backblow when people find out that these individuals are some of your conversation partners?
Man, I love it. See, I love it because I feel like what I'm doing is leading people to have these type of conversations, right? And I'm modeling that, right? Mm-hmm. I don't judge people based on an idea or this. I build relationships with people. I build relationships with people based on the things we have in common. So whether it's, I met my friend Brad right here. We was in Top Ridge, New York, with Harlem Crow and some more people, and we was kicking it, right? We was kicking it. That's how we met. An unlikely alliance. That's how me and Brad met, right? And then Brad said to me, look how this happened. Brad said to me after we met, he said, you have to meet Dr. Maria Dixon, right? And you just heard did you hear the introduction she gave me?
She love you.
Exactly.
She love you.
That introduction came from my relationship with those people you talking about that introduced me to Brad, that introduced me to Dr. Dixon, that introduced me to Dr. Gerald Turner, that has me sitting in this seat. See, if I was closed-minded, if I said, hey, I don't want to deal with him, I don't like his idea, then I wouldn't be sitting here. Yeah. But because my mind is open, because these are my friends, I look at them as, and listen to me, we don't have to agree on everything. Yeah. You feel me? Mm-hmm. But that don't X us out from being friends. Yeah. Because I'm quite sure some stuff that we do agree on. And let's firstly agree there. The guy that was an Aryan, from the outside looking at it, you say, why would they be connected, you know? But up close, the proximity of me and his relationship, we had a lot of stuff in common. See, people read the headlines. Yeah. They don't look at the details. And we have to get people to start reading the details, going into the details. Don't see an article, a headline, a clickbait on social media, and then you form your whole opinion just off the title. We have to be able to dive deep because every situation is different and you can't paint it with a broad brush. I work in the space of bridging the gap between law enforcement and community. I do that because at the height of George Floyd, it was a movement that was saying defund the police, et cetera, et cetera. Our organization went into these neighborhoods that are hotspot neighborhoods, and we did surveys, and we asked the people, how do you feel about police at the height of George Floyd? And 93% of the respondents said, we want more police. We want to feel protected. We just don't want to be harassed and profiled. And that went against the talking heads that you see on the late night news. So it was our ability to highlight those individuals because people will get clickbait and make these situations be all about race when they're not, and it makes it look the same. And it's hard for us to have real dialogue and real conversation because these clickbait articles is driving us. We have to, social media, and I'm gonna say this, has made us lazy because we just read articles and then we respond. But we have to get back. That's why I like this university. We have to get back to going deeper into the details, and sometimes it's not easy. Yeah. Sometimes it's not easy. You're not gonna get the response sometimes that you want. But wisdom has to say, if I keep working, because I know my purpose, if I keep working because I know better, that this gonna ultimately change. And that's what this is about. Building bridges in here with people, not being afraid. I go in any room and I want to talk to I want to touch everybody in the room. And I know people in their minds be saying, please don't walk over here, please don't say nothing to me. And I know they say that, that's why I do it. And I have some great relationships because of that, because I know they operating off of the algorithm as well. We have to go beyond the algorithms, because let me say this and I'm gonna be quiet.
You're good.
In the space that I work in terms of public safety, bridging the gap between law enforcement and community post George Floyd, and that I'm very passionate and concerned about, we never stop to think about what the algorithms are doing to us, right? So let me give you an example. If I'm a police officer, if I'm a white police officer, and I look at a video of pulling over an African-American man, and then he get out the car with a big old gun and he shoot the police officer, guess what the algorithm's gonna do? They're gonna feed me videos from all over the country of that, right? Or if I'm an African-American and I look at a video of a guy getting pulled over and he unarmed and he gets shot, guess what's gonna happen? It's gonna feed me the videos, the algorithm are. At no point do we stop to say, what's the effect on our conscience, whether I'm an officer, whether I'm a civilian. And so when you have these incidents where they meet, it's heightened by the fear of what's been fed to my subconscious, right? And I'm operating off that. We have to stop and begin to have real conversations, go deeper, so that we're not operating off the fear of the algorithms that's controlling us, that's making us think a certain way. We are real people. It's real people in here. It's real human beings in here. We have to have the human touch. We have to have these conversations. We got to have these proximity conversations and not be dogged by what we think. Because a lot of times I tell my daughter, this is my daughter right here. This is my daughter. Y'all give my daughter a hand. We can assume, we can make the assumption, but assumption is just not doing the work, right? And it's comfortable to make the assumption. It's comfortable for me to say this without doing the work. But when we do the work, it's in those relationships, it's in those connections that we realize we got a lot in common, that we realize we're human beings, we realize that we're Americans, we realize that we're in the best country in America. That's when we do that, but it comes from those conversations. But if we just watch the algorithm and being controlled by the algorithm, it'll keep us polarized. And so I'm on a mission, so to speak, to keep us from being polarized, to make us understand that we all as Americans have something to contribute, and that don't get discouraged about what you see in the media. Keep doing the work, because you know individuals that's at your table and they may not represent these headlines that you see, and you have to stand on that, and you got to speak on that. You got to show that I'm going to brag about my relationship with Brad. I'm going to brag about my relationship because I know that I'm working against the algorithms when I do. And so that's what I'm encouraging and challenging us to do in this build bridges. And it's okay. It's not easy. It's not easy. Sometimes I have friends. It took a while for me to break that ice, or for them to break the ice on me. It took a while for that, but the relationship that came afterward, the understanding that came afterward, is invaluable. So I implore all of us to do that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my sister.
So I don't know about you, but I could listen to Antong all day, and I have. Now, let me just line out for you what we're going to do the rest of our time together.
Yes.
We're going to have about 10 minutes for your questions for Antong, and I know you have them. Some of you may want to know what it means to have money on your books. Not that you're going to prison, but again, trying to give you cultural intelligence so that you're all right. If you have some friends who are felonious, just keep that in mind. And then we're going to have the opportunity, we've given you as a gift a copy of his book. And so Antong, after the question and answer time, will be over there signing those books and giving us that time. So I want to ask if anybody has a question for Antong, please go to this microphone right here so we can hear you. I know, come on down.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just go ahead and line up right there.
How you doing? My name is Brenda. Nice to meet you. My question is, you said you have 400 young people coming together with the gangs. So with that 400, did they denounce their gang affiliation right there? And also, like, what was the follow-up? What was the after to help them try to get through that? Because sometimes we do some great things within the community, and there's no follow-through, and then, you know, people backslide. They go back to what they know. So how did you get those 400 to continue to follow through with that?
That's a great question, Brenda. That day that we did that peace signing became the foundation of the work that we do today. Because from there, we went into the school. We went into the school without a plan. It was a principal. He just passed away 2 weeks ago, Robert Ward, who was the principal at Madison, who allowed us to come into his school. He probably got in trouble, but he passed away, so you can't get him in trouble. And it was a great guy. He allowed us in the school, and what we did, well, we took the OGs from each neighborhood, put them in the schools to be moral coaches, mentors to the young people that we were working with, right? And listen, prior to us going into school, they had 392 gang incidents the prior year.
Wow.
After 2 years in the school, it reduced down to two.
Incredible.
Because we had classes, we began to work with the young people. Some of those young people who are teenagers now, they are grown men and women today who attribute the work that we started in 2000 as changing their life. And now they do the same work with the young people in their neighborhoods. But follow-up is super important, and thank you for that question.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Victoria Valdere. I actually I'm a freshman right now. I came from a graduating class of 43 seniors. It was a real small class. And I got to know these people for, like, you know, the 4 years I was in high school. I'm Hispanic, and I just didn't feel like there was any kind of, like, racism or things like that. But now that I'm in a much bigger tank, you know, it can be intimidating because I've already had some experiences, you know, of some people making assumptions about my race or about, you know, me doing X, Y, Z. So how can you kind of break out of that, like, intimidation of being just in a small fish in a huge, like, ocean, and try to, you know, begin to connect bridges, make a difference without being discouraged by all these prejudices and such?
Right, and I love that question. Thank you for that question. The key to it is what I said earlier. When you knowledge is one, having the right information is one, but two, understanding that we all individuals, right? I was on the phone with my therapist last night. As much work that I do around this country, much people that I lead and help and et cetera, I was on the phone with my therapist last night, and I was having a moment, and she reminded me, right? She said, Antong, you are running the stories from your childhood. That's the little boy in you. That was last night. Because I was having the imposter syndrome, all that stuff, right? I was dealing with it. But my therapist was able to walk me down and say, listen, that has more to do with you. That's not them. So I want you to spend 10 minutes. She had me doing this exercise where I just wrote all of the good things I've done over the last 20 years. And she said, whenever you have that feeling of that you insecure or that you have an imposter or that you fearful, I want you to read this stuff to you with compassion. I want you to read and remind yourself, because you're going to be talking to the little boy in you. So I say to you this, right? You know why you want to do that. You know why you want to do the stuff that you do, right? Stay right there and just do it. Don't get fearful. Don't worry about that. Because when you live in your truth authentically, the truth shall set you free, and it's going to connect those people who need to hear your truth. Your medicine, your truth is for other people. And keep sharing it. Just keep sharing it. I used to come on stage and I'd be so nervous and shaking, and sometimes I still do. But it's okay. Just live in your truth, all right? Thank you.
Hello, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. I have a question. What are your perspectives on prison abolition?
Say it again.
What are your perspectives on prison abolition, specifically as it's mentioned by Angela Davis?
Prison abolition?
Yes.
You sure you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be very honest with you. It's the only way I know how to be. I don't feel, this is my personal, you know how that little thing said the rights and views of this is not SMU, this is Antong Lucky? Imagine that's playing right now, right? I'm familiar with prison abolition and that whole movement. I honestly don't feel that as a society we at that point yet, because I myself was in prison. And what I realized while I was in prison, I realized, one, that I didn't belong there. But two, I realized it's some people that belong there, right? I realized that. I don't think we at that point, because you got to understand, when some harm happens to an individual, whether it's your family or somebody else's family, they want justice. They want justice. And we ain't at that point in America where we can say we can do away with prison. It's the same argument when you saying, again, this, imagine that little info coming on, this opinion and views of Anton. Because I read Ibra Kendi, and I like all these people. I understand it. I understand where they're coming from. But even when we're talking about that, the movement of defund the police, I live and deal with people who are in the communities, right, who share a different view, right? We're not at that point where we can say, let's do away with policing, right? And I get the history, I get the historical context, but in order to stay safe as in a society, there has to be accountability, there has to be checks and balances. We got to have that. We can't do away with that. We're not at that point. Maybe 150 years from now, we can have that conversation, but right now, I personally don't think we're at that point to have abolition of prison or police. Thank you.
All right, we have time.
And I hope that don't get me in trouble. But that's just my honest. I'm telling you, I'm just being honest.
We have time for one more question. No, we'll do two. Okay, we'll do two.
Okay. All right, this is a little short. Here we go. So thank you for sharing your story. I'm very appreciative, sir. I will say I'm having a fangirl moment. I remember seeing the YouTube video of the truce that happened in Dallas in 2000.
Wow.
It's so interesting that this is happening. So thank y'all here at SMU. I am from Oklahoma. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma. You okay? So you spoke. Okay. You spoke to the silos and where we grow up.
Right.
And in small towns in Oklahoma, sometimes it's either gangs, along with the violence, sports. Then you work on your farm, or you work,
Right.
or you go to college. And college oftentimes steps down. That question out of that, I wanted to ask, how do you get through those facets of those and just make your way through how to get to these children's hearts? Because I used to also work at Job Corps.
Right.
And so college was never even a thing for them. Right. And so for me to sit there and say, you can go to college, I had to break through barriers.
Right.
I had to break through lies. I had to break through hatred that they had here. So how do you break that down? And then also, you do work here in Dallas as well. Are you speaking to our athletes?
Speaking to who?
Our athletes.
Yes.
Who want to go on to high school, college, and then eventually professional sports.
Right.
Are you speaking their truths as well?
Yes.
And also, I have homework for you. Look up Dr. Jack Mesereau. He also came up with the theory of transformational learning.
Transformational learning. I love that. Thank you, my sister. To answer your first question, right, this is what I understand. And my mentor told me these words right here. The first one he told me, I thought he was just rhyming, but they really have impact. He said, no matter what happens to you, you are responsible for what you do for you. And some of us gonna get that later. No matter what happens to you, you are responsible for what you do for you. That's one. Two is that we have to understand, this is what we have to understand, right? As we have to understand this, that it's okay for people not and as I was saying earlier, it's okay for you someone not to agree with you or not to see it your way. Oftentimes when people don't agree with us or they don't see it our way, we get butt hurt, right? We be hurt. But again, wisdom is saying, keep living in your truth, because that could be developmental for that person, or that person can be that person. But that don't stop you. You know, I used to complain about other people not seeing the vision, and my mentor said to me, I got a lot of sayings from my mentor. My mentor said to me, quit worrying about other people and do what God told you to do. That was some wisdom for me, man, because I spent so much time trying to convince people. People don't care about what you know until they know how much you care. You know that. And just keep walking in that, being the embodiment and the example, People rather witness a sermon than hear one any day. That's why I don't like talking to people, because people rather witness it than hear you talk about it any day. We just have to continue to walk in our truth and live in our truth. That's it. And the rest will happen. Just keep doing that, and the rest will happen. Thank you.
All right. And now we have our last question.
Hi, thank you for being here. Thank you, SMU, for having this event. Leadership carries a lot of weight.
Yes.
And it's all about how you make people feel versus how we feel about it. One thing that I did want to ask is, when you talk to these 13, 10, 15-year-old children, how do you get through to them your message? I mean, because they're all over the place. And you're trying to get them, like most of us, I'm sure, when we do mentoring and going to church, and it's just, they have so many distractions. And I think social media today is a big distraction for our kids. And it's growing them up in ways that I don't know if it's being managed. So I'm just wondering, how do you get through to these young children when you are out there sending that message? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I'll be very brief. My mentor, another mentor moment. So if I don't tell you anything, understand the need for a mentor. But my mentor told me, Willie Ray Fleming once said that the problem with our communities is LOL, lack of love. And it's speaking to the young people you're talking about. It's lack of love. And then he went on to say the solution to our community is LOL. I thought he was crazy when he said that. The issue, lack of love, the solution is LOL, which is a lot of love. We just have to give those young people a lot of love, because it's easy to assume that they don't want it. It's easy to look at them from the lenses of social media or media. But what you're looking at is young people who are looking for some love, some unconditional love from adults. If I had time, I can show you in detail after detail young people who other people gave up on, that we mentored, that my team. Can my team stand up for a second? Y'all give my team, because this is the work they do all the time. We work with young people all the time and have so much success. It's nothing like seeing a light bulb go off in a young person, just as it was for me. And once you make one light bulb go off, you become addicted to making more light bulbs go off. But it's the love that we got to give to our young people. So thank you for that question.
Everyone, I want to thank you. And the fact that he wanted to put up his information, he's real about connecting. And he will respond, much to his staff's chagrin. We want to thank you for coming out to today's Bridge Builder Luncheon. We will continue to hold these throughout the year, throughout the academic year, to bring in and highlight the people who are doing the work that really makes a difference in our world, that allows us, not only here at SMU, but the city of Dallas and this region, to truly be world changers. We want to thank you again. If you would like to, you can go ahead and start lining up for the book signing. We'll take a couple of pictures, and then Antong will, I promise, you will do this, right? Right. He's going to sign the book. And he might even talk to you and talk your ear off, but you'll be better for it. Thank you again for coming, and have a wonderful day.
Yes.
And no conversation can happen if that's the basis of the conversation.
Exactly. Amen to that.
Yeah. And it's good talk.
Yes.
Good talk.
I would love that. Thank you again.
I look forward.
Thank you so much for being here. It's so nice to meet you.
Thank you. There we go.
Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate all your work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I might reach out. I do have some questions.
Okay. And please tell me what you think about the book. Please tell me what you think about the book.
Yes.
What you think about the book.
Yes.
I want honest feedback.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Yes. Well, thank you for opening up.
Yes, indeed. I want to thank you. Okay. I had a judge just called me this morning and said the same thing. Yeah, yes. We definitely need to come. Oh, I bumped the button. Can you open it back up for me? Sorry. I'll make sure that I'm there. One. Is it on Sean there? What's up, my friend? Good, how are you? All right. I really appreciate you coming in and talking to us. No problem, man. Good minds, good thoughts that you have. Yeah, we need some help on that. Man, whatever I can do to help, whatever you got going, you got my information, hit me up. Absolutely. You know, I think most people, they just have to hear it and see it to know it's real. So it's easy for us to get in our echo chamber and not understand the bigger picture. It's a bigger picture.
Well, you're so spot on about the clickbait and the surface level, not getting deep on things, not having meaningful conversations and extending themselves.
You got it, that's all right.
I appreciate you. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What's up, my brother?
Great. I look forward to reading your book, honestly.
I got loud and you read it. You good about it? How do you feel?
I have a friend of mine just released a journal, put it on Amazon too as well. That's his biggest thing.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that at first when I first released the book. And now I say it now, but the book's been doing well. Like I released it in 2020. They still buying the book.
That means you got some good stuff to say.
Yeah.
I have a question for you while I got your time.
Okay.
You can go back and release it.
Okay. Which part of Alabama? Okay.
I went to school in Birmingham, UAB. And I worked with some Jefferson County School District. And one thing that I saw in regards to just the influence of violence and stuff like that was that there was one of the main proponents of it was a lack of resources.
Look, This is high level. We go a little bit deeper to talk about what you're talking about.
For sure.
No,
for
we
sure.
go deeper. We go deeper.
I got your information from there, so I'll connect with you.
Hit me up, man, so I can show you what we do and go a little bit deeper about what we do and how we do.
I'd love to do that here. Do you mind if we
Come on up.
Yeah,
Hit me up. 169.
You ready to play for us, Norman?
Yeah, you better know it. Go ahead. I'm trying to get
yeah, and I lost my knee. I got dropped. So it was my fault. It wasn't the dog. I was mad.
What? Yeah. What? You need Cameron to do the radio show. In the video, yeah. Cameron is talented.
And catch me. But yeah, I want to go to the prison.
I just see
It's at the end of this month. I know, but I'm kind of scared, so I'll probably chicken out.
what you doing here?
Oh no, I don't want someone to press me.